Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're playing Atomic Chess, where pieces explode in a 3x3 square around a capture, except pawns which are immune in that square. My goal is to win 3 games, and I will only play against higher rated opponents. Let's get started with game number 1. Alright, game number 1, we get the white pieces, and we're paired with an 1800 rated opponent with either a gibberish name or a name in another language, but I'm pretty sure that's just a gibberish name. We're met with e6. This opponent is rated almost 200 points higher than us. We'll immediately go for the win. If we can take on f7, we explode the surrounding pieces, which includes the king. We get queen to f6 in response. Were I to move this queen out of the way, we would immediately lose, so I'm going to actually ignore it. I think I'm just going to play knight to h3, because should the queen take, it uses up the opponent's turn, and of course pawns don't explode in this variant, so it would just be a queen trade, which would allow me to play knight to g5 and look for winning ideas. So I think for now the best move is to leave this tension on the board, maybe look for some like bishop to b5 ideas, maybe bishop d3. If we can get the bishop to g6, then the queen is threatened, but we do get that queen trade instead. So knight to g5, immediately threatening the win. Knight into f7. There's no such thing as a free piece in this variant. If the opponent ever takes a piece, they lose the piece that they capture with as well. So this is not a free knight. We get bishop to c5, which as far as I can tell doesn't actually threaten anything. We could take the rook and get rid of the knight in the process, but I almost enjoy just having the knight there instead. Let's play bishop to b5 with the idea that if we take on d7, again, the king is caught in that explosion. If we get c6, I might even just leave that there, because if the opponent ever takes, they take out their bishop in the process, and that's simply better for us. It's a trade, and it opens up the position, not to mention it uses up their turn. And it's in these variants that one starts to realize the real importance of having that initiative the entire time. Okay, knight to e7. If the opponent castled here, that would actually be hilarious. Nothing but respect for that idea. We'll move the bishop back since that idea didn't come to fruition. And honestly, I'd like to have this threat on the board. If the opponent does decide to castle, it's an immediate win. Okay, the opponent sacrifices the bishop on e3, which does lose us a pawn because it takes our bishop out in the process. But it does allow us to accelerate the development of our own bishop, not to mention knight to e4 here. How do you stop knight to d6? Or do you even have to stop knight to d6? Yeah, I think you do have to stop it, because knight to d6, king moves over, knight into e8. Neither of these knights are hanging because only the king can take it. And then I don't see how you get rid of all of these different capturing ideas. I guess you'd just move the pawn out of the way, but we're met with knight to f5 instead. We could take here, but it would actually take out our own knight in the process. So check, the opponent takes, gets rid of their knight. I guess I'm fine with that, and it's back to our turn after that, so we can castle out of the way and actually bring the rook into the equation as well. Although, is it worth bringing the bishop in first? I am not totally sure. I'm actually going to deliver this check first, I think. I'm ignoring the rook because that would just win me the exchange, and in this variant, I think it's just way more valuable to have have a piece bothering the king. The king moves out of the way, and now this knight kind of controls the center of the board. It's really hard for black to develop now, other than moving the pieces out through the side. We're going to castle. Now the idea is rook to e1, sack on e6. Pretty self-explanatory, takes out the king in the process. And again, black has to develop a little bit awkwardly here. We get pawn to e5. I can just play d4. Anything to open up the middle of the board, and this should be completely winning for us. We should be in for a decent number of rating points. Again, once the king is this exposed, it's just really, really hard to hold the position together. Knight to b4, a valiant effort, but I believe if I just take, I'm looking straight at the king, and there shouldn't be a way for the opponent to run away. Oh, I've inadvertently eliminated my own knight, but again, there's no way to block this. So no matter what the opponent plays, the next move, I can guaranteed place the rook right next to the king, and then there's no way for the opponent to stop me from capturing something on the next turn and winning. And with that, we do get the resignation and win game number 1. Let's go to move on to game number 2. Opponent says GG's in chat, so of course I have to respond with a GG as well. All right, game number 2, we get the white pieces. Opponent is rated about 70 points higher than us, and we're met with e5. We'll go with the same idea because it hasn't failed us yet. So we'll play queen to f3, looking to sack on f7, and we're met with queen to f6 once more. I'm very tempted to just ignore this and play bishop to c4. If we do get d5, ignore it again. I don't know if any of these ideas are validated, but it feels like that makes sense. Let's start with knight to h3. Again, looking for knight to g5, winning on f7. We do get the queen trade, so knight back to g5. This seems to be now our staple opening. We get pawn to f6, throw the knight into the position. We get bishop to b4, which does threaten to capture, takes out the king in the process, so we'll play c3 to boot the bishop, and the bishop does move back. Okay, now the question is, how do we follow up on this attack? I guess knight to a3 makes some good sense. Looking for knight to b5, maybe knight to c4. We get knight to h6 by the opponent. Again, they can't actually take because it would take out the king in the process, but I don't think that's what they're looking for. I think they're looking for knight to g4 to take on f2, which would pretty much be an instant victory. It would take out the king in the process, but if they play knight to g4 and I move out of the way, then I don't think there's a victory anymore. Let's do this. We'll play bishop to e2. If the knight goes to g4, I think I'm fine with that trade, and if it doesn't, and it doesn't, we get pawn to d5, then at least I develop a bishop that has some attacking ideas. Let's continue with knight to b5. I like this idea, taking out several pieces in the process. And we get pawn to c6. Okay, but now I come in with check. This is almost a one-to-one recreation of the last game, and it's very hard to see how black holds on to this position. King to e7, this is an absolutely insane move, and I believe it does work. Let's play knight to e8, and again, I don't see how you get away from all these incredible captures. We get pawn to f5, well, I guess it's possible. And there are no pieces around the king, so we actually do need to bring more pieces into the attack. Let's play pawn to b4, with the simple idea of, yes, we're hitting the bishop, but we're actually looking for bishop to a3. And even better, I can just play b5, and I'm threatening to take out the bishop with that capture. Okay, black decides to get rid of the bishop themselves. I could play bishop to a3, but then c5. On the other hand, I could take here first. Knight to g4, I move the king out of the way. I don't think there's a follow-up there, and then bishop to a3 seems quite difficult to deal with, so we'll go ahead and take on c6. Black does go for that winning idea, but I think we can just shuffle out of the way, and there's no way for the knight to reroute and catch a better angle against our king. So now bishop to a3 does deliver a check, and I don't believe there's anywhere safe for the king to go. King to e6 loses to knight takes e5. King to e6, we take. And with that, we win game number 2. Let's go to move on to game number 3. All right, game number 3. I think this is the highest rated opponent we're facing today, 1900, and we get the black pieces. I say that quite cheekily, assuming that I'm going to win this, but we get pawn to d4, which is very interesting. We'll play knight to f6, obviously looking for the immediate winning idea. Bishop to f4. Wait a minute. How is this not completely winning? Knight to e4 and then what? I'm threatening this. Should the opponent just take? I guess it gets rid of a lot of pieces, but again, this is winning. So knight to e4, f3 I'm assuming is the idea. Knight to d2? I don't see what the idea is there. I might just be completely missing why I'm losing, but knight to d2 and then what? If the king moves, I take on f1. If anything else, like taking the actual knight, then it just takes the king with it. Holy smokes, I think we just took out a 1900 player in the fastest game of the 3 that we've played today, and we did. We get the resignation and a smooth 17 points of rating to win game number 3. Now, to be honest, I should end the video here, but I'm quite enjoying this variant, so we're gonna go ahead and throw in a bonus game. Let's go to move on to game number 4. All right, we've now joined the mysterious game number 4 against the same opponent. Wait, are they going to let me play the exact same thing? Surely they will change their idea. Okay, bishop to g5. Oh, maybe bishop to f4 was a misclick because this makes way more sense. If I move the knight, I immediately lose. So that I can understand. Let's play e6. If the opponent takes, it's just a fair trade and it allows me to develop my queen. We get e4 instead. I think we are about to uncover the true wrath of this 1900 rated player. Pawn to e4 makes a lot more sense as well. We'll play h6. I do have the interest of booting this bishop because I do need to develop my queen. We get pawn h4 instead. So what happens if I take? I get rid of my knight in the process, but this pawn doesn't move. So I don't actually understand the idea of that. Unless maybe it's like to keep pushing somehow, but queen to h5 isn't possible. The rook just looks at the queen. Queen to f3 is possible. We might just offer a trade at that point. Anything else? And I think we're just playing queen to f6, looking for queen takes f2. Okay, we get knight to f3, looking for this idea. So queen to f6 seems like a pretty good way to pin that knight to the pawn on f2. And we may also have to keep in mind that we'll need to like bring some more pieces into the attack at some point. So for example, bishop d6 here actually makes some interesting sense. The problem is we're met with e5. Queen here? Wait, what about queen here right now? Queen to f4, the idea is queen to d2, which is immediately winning. I don't think that's stoppable. Queen to f4, let's go for it. Because an open center is great in a normal game of chess, but in atomic chess where there's no real such thing as a free piece, I'm not so sure about it. The only hope that I see is like bishop e2 and then scramming with the king, but even then I just play check, king moves over, and I sack. Oh, bishop b5 does make sense. Wait, but queen d2? Oh, and I lose on d7. Okay, so c6 is forced. This game does not prioritize check, so if you give check to the opponent, it doesn't actually really matter. They can just sack on d7 and win the game. Okay, this makes some good sense. Queen to c1, but what about queen d2 now? Boom, queen to d2 check, triple exclamation mark, and with that, we win our bonus game, game number 4. Absolutely amazing. If you guys did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Let me know down below what other variants I should play, and I will see you guys in the next one.